My family insists that I hand over the house I bought on my own to my pregnant sister because she needs it more. I saved for 8 years, working 2 jobs and living in a studio apartment the size of a walk-in closet. My credit score is perfect. My down payment came from overtime checks and skipped vacations, but none of that matters to my parents. Brenna's carrying twins. Mom said over Sunday dinner, as if that explained everything. She needs space. You're single. You don't need 3 bedrooms. What she didn't mention was that Brenna and her husband Tyler are both employed, making nearly double my salary combined. They've been renting a perfectly nice condo for the past 2 years. They just don't want to save like I did. I'm not giving her my house, I said flatly. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. We raised you better than to be selfish. Family comes first. Selfish? That word has followed me my entire life. When I wouldn't lend Brenna money for her wedding after she'd already blown through her budget, when I refused to co-sign Tyler's truck loan, when I took the promotion that required relocating instead of staying close to help with their first pregnancy scare that turned out to be nothing. The pressure campaign started immediately. Group texts, voicemails, my aunt showing up at my office with pamphlets about the importance of family bonds. They made it sound like I was hoarding wealth instead of simply keeping what I'd earned through years of sacrifice while Brenna took European vacations and bought designer furniture. Just think about it. Mom pleaded during her 3rd call that week. You could move back into an apartment. Brenna needs to nest. I blocked everyone for a week to think clearly. During that time, I found something interesting while reviewing paperwork from when Dad had co-signed my first student loan. He'd forged my signature on a credit card application when I was 19. The charges totaled $6,400, mostly at golf courses and restaurants. He'd been making minimum payments from my account for 3 years before I discovered it, and paid it off myself. I'd never confronted him, just quietly handled it and moved on. The family peace was worth more than the fight, or so I thought. When I finally agreed to meet them for coffee, I brought documents. Every text message, every guilt trip, every instance where they'd chosen Brenna over the past decade. I also brought my lawyer. I'm not giving Brenna the house, I announced, but I am suing Dad for identity theft and fraud related to the credit card incident. Mom went pale. Brenna started crying. Dad said I was being dramatic. You can drop the house demands or I file Monday morning, I said calmly. The statute of limitations hasn't run out. I have bank statements, credit reports, and the forged signature. The coffee shop went silent. That's when Brenna said something that changed everything. You always do this. You hold grudges. You know what? I'm glad you're alone. I'm glad you'll never have what I have. She stood up, hand on her belly. Tyler and I were actually going to ask you to be the twins' godmother, but you've shown your true colors. She grabbed her purse and stormed out. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt something crack open inside me, a realization that maybe I'd been protecting the wrong people my entire life. My lawyer leaned forward. There's something else you should know about your family's finances, something involving your grandmother's estate. I couldn't fit what happens next in this short video. Watch the rest down below. My grandmother died when I was 23. I was living across the country at the time, working my first real job after college. I flew home for the funeral, stayed 3 days, then flew back. The whole thing felt rushed and distant. Grandma had always been kind to me, slipping me $20 bills when my parents weren't looking, telling me I was smart enough to do anything I wanted. At the funeral, Dad mentioned something about Grandma leaving everything to be split equally between him and his sister, my Aunt Patricia. I didn't think much about it. I was grieving and exhausted. Your grandmother left a will, my lawyer said now, pulling out a manila folder. The original will, dated 2019, 4 months before her death. I stared at the folder. I don't understand. What does this have to do with anything? Your father presented a different will to probate court, she continued. One dated 2 weeks before her death, supposedly replacing the original. That second will left everything to your father, cutting out your aunt entirely. My mouth went dry. Aunt Patricia got nothing? Nothing. Your father claims your grandmother had changed her mind because your aunt had become estranged from the family, but I did some digging after you mentioned the credit card fraud. It made me curious about other potential financial irregularities. She slid the folder across the table. Inside was a photocopy of Grandma's original will. My hands shook as I read it. The estate was supposed to be divided 4 ways: 25% to Dad, 25% to Aunt Patricia, 25% to me, 25% to Brenna. I was supposed to inherit a quarter of her estate, approximately $340,000, my lawyer said quietly. Your sister was supposed to receive the same. Your father submitted a forged will that gave him everything, then presumably distributed funds to your sister without telling you. The coffee shop tilted. I gripped the table edge. Mom was staring at the document, her face ashen. She hadn't known. I could see it in her eyes. She'd married a man who'd robbed his own children. That's insane, Dad said, but his voice cracked. That's not Mom changed her will. She told me she wanted me to handle everything. Then you won't mind if we compare signatures with known samples. My lawyer said pleasantly, or if we request a handwriting analysis. The probate court would be very interested to know if the second will was fraudulent. Dad stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. This is blackmail. This is justice, I said, finding my voice. You stole from me. You stole from Aunt Patricia. You probably gave Brenna her share to keep her quiet, or maybe she doesn't even know. But you took mine and pretended it never existed. We needed that money, Mom said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at her. She looked at Dad with something between betrayal and desperation. Tell her why. Dad's jaw worked. He sat back down heavily. Your father's business was failing, Mom said, her voice hollow. We were about to lose everything. The house, the cars, our retirement. When your grandmother died, it felt like a lifeline. So you committed fraud, I said flatly. We were going to tell you eventually, Dad said. We were going to give you your share once we got back on our feet. It's been 7 years. These things take time. Stop. Just stop. I stood up, gathering my documents. You had 7 years to make this right. Instead, you spent that time demanding I give Brenna my house, the house I bought with money I earned while you were living off what you stole from me. Where are you going? Mom asked desperately. To file multiple lawsuits. Identity theft, fraud, elder abuse for what you did to Grandma. Whatever charges the prosecutor wants to bring for the forged will. I looked at Dad. You're going to prison, and I'm getting every penny back. I walked out of that coffee shop and didn't look back. The next morning, I called Aunt Patricia for the first time in 7 years. We'd lost touch after Grandma's funeral. Dad had told me she was angry and difficult, that she'd caused problems during the estate settlement. Another lie. Hello? Her voice was cautious. Aunt Patricia, this is your niece. We need to talk about Grandma's will. There was a long pause. I've been waiting for this call for 7 years. Turned out Aunt Patricia had suspected the will was forged from the beginning. The signature looked wrong. The timing was suspicious, and it didn't match anything Grandma had told her about her final wishes. But she didn't have the money to fight Dad in court. She'd been working as a teacher, recently divorced, struggling to stay afloat. Dad knew she couldn't afford a legal battle. He counted on me being too poor to fight back, Aunt Patricia said bitterly, and he was right. Not anymore, I told her. I have a lawyer, we have evidence, and we're taking him down. We met 2 days later at my new house, the one my family wanted me to give away. Aunt Patricia walked through it slowly, touching the granite countertops, admiring the built-in bookshelves. You did this on your own, she said softly. No help from anyone. I didn't know I was supposed to get help. Dad never mentioned the inheritance. She turned to look at me, and I saw tears in her eyes. Your grandmother loved you so much. She told me she was leaving you that money specifically for a house. She wanted you to have something that was truly yours, something your parents couldn't control or influence. She knew what they were like. The words hit me like a physical blow. Grandma had seen it. She tried to protect me even after death, and Dad had stolen that protection away. We're getting it back, I said, all of it. The lawsuits took 8 months to wind their way through the courts. During that time, my family fell apart in spectacular fashion. Mom filed for divorce after discovering Dad had also been siphoning money from their joint accounts to pay off gambling debts. The credit card fraud from when I was 19 wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern. He'd been stealing from everyone around him for years. Brenna called me crying 3 weeks after the coffee shop confrontation. Tyler had found out about the inheritance money and the potential fraud charges. He'd consulted his own lawyer, worried about being implicated in any financial crimes. His lawyer told him to distance himself immediately. "Tyler's leaving me," Brenna sobbed. "He says he can't be married to someone whose family is under criminal investigation. It'll ruin his career." I felt nothing. No sympathy, no satisfaction, just emptiness. "I didn't know," Brenna insisted, "about the will, about any of it. Dad just gave me $80,000 5 years ago, said it was an early inheritance, that Grandma wanted me to have it. I used it for the wedding and the down payment on our condo." "You got your share," I said quietly. "I got nothing. I didn't know you were supposed to get anything," she whispered. "I swear, I thought it was just extra because I was getting married. I thought, God, I'm so sorry." "You told me you were glad I was alone. You said I'd never have what you have." Silence on the other end of the line. "I was angry," she finally said. "You were threatening Dad. I didn't understand." "You weren't supposed to understand. You were supposed to trust me. We're sisters. Can you forgive me?" I thought about the 8 years I'd spent working 2 jobs, the studio apartment where I couldn't fully extend my arms, the nights I'd eaten ramen so I could put another $200 toward my down payment, all while Brenna and Tyler had taken weekend trips to Napa and renovated their condo with money that was supposed to be mine. "No," I said. "I don't think I can." I hung up. The criminal case against Dad moved faster than the civil suits. The prosecutor was a middle-aged woman whose own mother had been the victim of elder financial abuse. She went after Dad with everything she had: forging a will, elder exploitation, identity theft for the credit card, fraud. The charges stacked up like dominoes. Dad's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal. No prison time, just probation and restitution. The prosecutor laughed in his face. "Your client defrauded his own dying mother and stole from his children." She said during the hearing I attended, "There's a special place in hell for people like him, but first there's a place in Rikers." Dad got 6 years. Mom, who'd genuinely been unaware of the extent of his crimes, got nothing. She'd been another victim. Another person Dad had manipulated and lied to. The civil suit took longer. Dad had already spent most of the inheritance money. The business had failed anyway, despite his fraudulent infusion of cash. The house was mortgaged to the hilt. There was almost nothing left to recover except Brenna's condo. My lawyer explained it carefully. The down payment came from stolen funds. Legally, we can force a sale to recover those assets. I looked at Aunt Patricia. She looked at me. "I don't want to make my sister homeless," I said slowly. "Even after everything, even though she's been living in a home partially paid for with your money." I thought about Brenna's words at the coffee shop, her cruelty, the way she'd thrown the godmother offer in my face like a weapon. I also thought about the sister who taught me to ride a bike when I was 6, who'd let me sleep in her room during thunderstorms, who'd existed before Tyler, before the entitlement, before she'd learned to be my parents' favorite by being whatever they wanted. "Give her 6 months," I said. 6 months to refinance or sell on her own terms. If she can buy out the fraudulent portion of her down payment, she can keep the condo. If not, we force the sale. Aunt Patricia squeezed my hand. "You're a better person than I am." "No," I said. "I just don't want to become what he was." Brenna couldn't refinance. Tyler had already left, taking his income with him. She was 7 months pregnant with twins and couldn't work enough hours to qualify for a loan that would cover the buyout. The condo sold in 4 weeks. After paying off the mortgage, there was $160,000 left. I got $80,000. Aunt Patricia got $80,000. It wasn't the full $340,000 we'd each been owed, but it was something. Brenna moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a worse neighborhood. She called me once after the move, her voice small and defeated. "I had to sell all the designer furniture," she said. "Everything from the condo. It didn't fit. And I needed the money. The twins will be here in 6 weeks, and I don't have anything. No crib, no changing table, nothing." I waited for the guilt to come, the family obligation, the voice of my parents telling me blood was thicker than water, that sisters had to stick together. It didn't come. "You should call some charities," I said. "There are organizations that help single mothers." "I'm not a single mother. Tyler and I are just." "He filed for divorce, Brenna. You are a single mother." She was crying now. This isn't how it was supposed to be. I was supposed to have the perfect family. The perfect house. You were supposed to be the sad single one who never got it together. There it was, the truth she'd been too polite to say before. Goodbye, Brenna. I blocked her number after that. The $80,000 from the condo sale went straight into my savings account. Combined with my own savings, I finally had the emergency fund I'd been dreaming of for years. 6 months of expenses, security, freedom. I could finally breathe. Aunt Patricia and I started meeting for dinner once a month. She told me stories about Grandma that I'd never heard, about how Grandma had worked 3 jobs to put Dad through college, how she'd sacrificed everything for her children, how she'd been disappointed when Dad had turned out the way he did. She never said it directly, Aunt Patricia explained, but I could see it in her eyes when he'd show up asking for money. She knew he'd never pay it back. Why did she leave him anything at all? Because he was her son. She loved him even though he'd disappointed her. That's what parents do. Love you even when you don't deserve it. I thought about my own parents, the way they'd pressured me, the way they'd always chosen Brenna, the way they'd stolen from me and then demanded more. Not all parents, I said quietly. Aunt Patricia raised her wine glass. No, not all parents. 6 months after Dad went to prison, I got a letter from him. It had been forwarded through my lawyer since I'd blocked all other contact. The letter was 7 pages long, single space, dense with justifications and excuses. He explained about the business failing, about the pressure he'd felt to provide for his family, about the gambling addiction he'd hidden for years. He'd meant to pay me back. He'd always meant to make it right. He just needed time. If I'd been patient, if I hadn't involved lawyers, everything could have been worked out. It was my fault, really, that it had come to this. The last line made my hand shake. I hope someday you'll forgive me and we can be a real family again. Love, Dad. I read the letter 3 times. Each time I felt the old hooks trying to catch, the guilt, the obligation, the little girl who just wanted her father's approval. Then I tore it into small pieces and threw it away. I didn't owe him forgiveness. I didn't owe him anything. 2 years passed. I got promoted to senior analyst at my company. The raise was substantial. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't constantly worried about money. I could buy groceries without checking my bank balance first. I could replace my worn-out work shoes without budgeting for 2 months. It felt surreal. I started dating someone I'd met at a work conference. His name was Desmond, and he was kind and stable, and had no interest in using me for money or connections. On our 4th date, I told him about my family, about the lawsuits and the fraud and the estrangement. That sounds lonely, he said simply. No judgment, no pressure to reconcile, just acknowledgement. It is, I admitted. Sometimes I miss having a family, even a terrible one. There's this empty space where they used to be. So fill it with something better. I started volunteering at a local women's shelter teaching financial literacy classes, how to build credit, how to save, how to stop financial abuse before it trapped you. The women who came to my classes had escaped situations worse than mine: domestic violence, economic coercion, partners who controlled every penny and left them with nothing. They thanked me with tears in their eyes, clutching the handouts I'd prepared about opening secret bank accounts and hiding emergency cash. I understood them in a way I never had before. One evening, a young woman approached me after class. She couldn't have been older than 22. My family wants me to give them my paycheck every month, she said. They say it's my duty since I'm living in their house rent-free, but I can't ever save. I can't ever leave. I saw myself at 19, watching Dad make minimum payments on the credit card he'd opened in my name. Here's what you do, I told her, and proceeded to outline a step-by-step plan for secret savings, for setting boundaries, for getting out. 3 months later, she sent me a photo. She was standing in front of a small apartment, her own keys in her hand, grinning widely. That photo went on my refrigerator, a reminder that sometimes the best family isn't the one you're born into. It's the one you build yourself. I'd been estranged from my parents and sister for 3 years when Mom called. It was late evening, and I almost didn't answer. The number had changed since I blocked it, but I recognized the area code. Hello? Please don't hang up. Mom's voice was desperate. I need to talk to you. I should have ended the call. Instead, I waited. Your father's being released early, she said. Good behavior. He'll be out in 2 weeks. Congratulations. He wants to see you. He wants to apologize properly, face to face. He's been going to therapy in prison. He's changed. I laughed. Actually laughed. No, please, he's your father. He made mistakes, but he's learned from them. Family is supposed to forgive. Is that what you did? You forgave him for stealing from you? From me? From everyone? I'm still your mother. You stood by and watched him demand I give my house to Brenna. You didn't question it. You didn't defend me. You just went along with whatever he wanted. I didn't know about the will then, but you knew about the credit card fraud. You knew he'd forged my signature and stolen from me when I was 19. I mentioned it at the coffee shop, and you barely blinked. You'd known all along, hadn't you? Silence. Hadn't you? We were trying to protect you, she whispered, from the burden of knowing what he was capable of. You mean you were trying to protect him, to keep me from filing charges, to maintain the illusion of a normal family while he destroyed me from the inside? That's not fair. I don't care about fair. I care about truth. And the truth is that you chose him over me every single time. He's sick. The gambling addiction, the lying, it's a disease, and I'm done being infected by it. I felt surprisingly calm. Don't call this number again. If Dad wants to apologize, he can write a letter. I probably won't read it, but at least it won't interrupt my evening. I hung up. Desmond looked up from his book. Your mom? Yeah. How do you feel? I thought about it. Tired, but okay. He nodded and went back to reading. He didn't need to make a big deal out of it. He understood that sometimes the right thing to do was simply witness and accept. That's what love looked like, I realized. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, just quiet understanding, just showing up, just believing someone when they said they were okay or not okay and responding accordingly. Dad got released 3 weeks later. I found out because Aunt Patricia called to warn me. He's been asking around about where you live, she said. He knows what city you're in. I think he might try to show up. Let him try. I'd already changed the locks and installed a security system. My neighborhood had a gate code. I'll call the police if he shows up. He thinks you owe him a chance. I owe him nothing. 2 days later, I came home from work to find Dad sitting on the curb outside my gate. He looked older, grayer. Prison had carved lines into his face that hadn't been there before. I parked my car inside the gate and walked over to the intercom. You need to leave. I just want to talk. His voice was raspy. 5 minutes. No. I'm your father. You're a felon who committed fraud and identity theft against. That's what you are now. The father part ended when you forged Grandma's will. I made mistakes. I was desperate, but I paid for them. I did my time. You did part of your time. You still owe me 3 years of sleep I lost, 8 years of struggle I endured, and an entire inheritance you stole. You'll never pay enough time for that. He stood up, gripping the gate bars. I'm still your father. That has to mean something. It means I know exactly how little I can trust you. It means I know that given the choice between doing the right thing and taking the easy way out, you'll always choose yourself. It means I've spent 3 years building a life without you, and it's been the best 3 years of my adult life. His face crumpled. Please, I've changed. I'm in therapy. I'm going to AA meetings. I'm trying to be better. Good. Be better for yourself. Be better for Mom if she's stupid enough to take you back, but don't ask me to be the test case for your redemption story. I'm not a character in your narrative about overcoming adversity. I'm the person you victimized. You can't hold a grudge forever. Watch me. I walked back to my car, drove through the gate, and closed it behind me. In my rearview mirror, I could see him still standing there, shoulders slumped, looking lost. I felt nothing. That evening, I blocked his new number. Then I called my lawyer to get a restraining order drafted, just in case. You're really done with them, Desmond observed. It wasn't a question. I'm really done. He kissed my forehead. Good. 4 years after the coffee shop confrontation, Brenna reached out through a mutual friend. She'd been sober for 18 months and was working through her steps. She wanted to make amends. The mutual friend, Callie, called me first. I know you're not in contact with your sister, but she's really trying to get her life together. The twins are in preschool now. She's working full-time. She's taking accountability. That's great for her. She wants to apologize to you properly. She can write a letter. She'd prefer to do it in person. I'm sure she would, but I don't owe her my presence. If she wants to apologize, she can write it down. If it's genuine, I'll know. The letter arrived 2 weeks later. It was 4 pages long, handwritten. No justifications, no excuses, just a straightforward accounting of how she'd treated me, how she'd been entitled and cruel, how she'd benefited from stolen money while I'd struggled. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just said she was sorry and that she understood if I never wanted to speak to her again. She hoped I was happy. She hoped I'd found peace. The twins were named Oliver and Sophie. They loved dinosaurs and painting. Tyler sent child support, but had remarried and started a new family. He saw them twice a month. She was dating someone new, a man named Grant, who knew about her past and didn't judge her for it. They were taking things slow. She'd gotten her real estate license and was doing well. She'd saved enough to put a down payment on a small house in a decent school district. She was building something for herself and her children. No one else's money, no one else's help. I think about you sometimes, she wrote at the end. I wonder if you ever think about me, if you ever miss having a sister. I miss having you, but I understand why you're gone. I drove you away. I chose wrong over and over. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm sorry. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a box in my closet with all the other artifacts of my old life. I didn't respond. A month later, I got an invitation to Aunt Patricia's wedding. She was marrying her longtime girlfriend, Diane, who I'd met several times at our monthly dinners. The ceremony would be small, just close friends and family. Family. The word didn't hurt anymore. I went to the wedding with Desmond. Aunt Patricia cried when she saw me. We danced together, her in her elegant navy suit, me in a green dress I'd bought without checking the price tag first. I'm so glad you're here, she said. You're the only blood family I have left that I actually want to know. What about Dad? He sent a card. I threw it away. She smiled. Some bridges are meant to burn. What about Brenna? I invited her. She declined, said she didn't think you'd want her there. She was right. Aunt Patricia squeezed my hand. You don't have to forgive her, you know. Not ever. Not even if she spends the rest of her life making amends. You get to decide what's best for you. I know. And you're okay with your decision. I watched Diane laughing with her friends, watched Desmond chatting easily with the caterer about food allergies, watched this chosen family celebrate love in all it. I'm more than okay, I said. 5 years after the coffee shop, I'd been with Desmond for 3 of those years. We'd moved in together, adopted a dog, and built a life that felt steady and real. I'd been promoted again. Aunt Patricia and Diane had become regular fixtures in our lives, coming over for Sunday dinners where we cooked elaborate meals and talked about everything and nothing. I rarely thought about my parents or Brenna anymore. They'd become historical figures, people I used to know, characters in a story about someone else's life. Then I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You should know." Inside was a single line. Your father is dying. Pancreatic cancer. Weeks, maybe days. He's asking for you. The email was signed by someone named Evelyn, who identified herself as Dad's hospice social worker. I stared at the email for a long time. Desmond came into my office. You okay? You've been quiet. I showed him the email. What do you want to do? He asked. I don't know. That was the truth. I'd imagined this moment before, thought about what I'd feel when one of my parents eventually died. I'd expected rage or satisfaction, or at least some sense of closure. Instead, I felt numb, distant, like I was reading about a stranger's life. Do you want to go see him? Desmond pressed gently. I don't think so. Are you sure? I don't owe him a deathbed reconciliation. I don't owe him the comfort of my forgiveness so he can die feeling like he made things right. He didn't make things right. He just ran out of time. Okay. That's it? Just okay? Desmond shrugged. It's your decision. I'll support whatever you choose. If you want to go, I'll drive you. If you want to stay home, I'll make dinner and we'll watch that documentary about the cheese caves. I laughed despite myself. The cheese caves? You said you wanted to see it. I leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. This was family. Not blood, not obligation, but choice. Every single day choosing each other. Let's watch the cheese documentary, I said. I never responded to Evelyn's email. Dad died 6 days later. I found out through Aunt Patricia, who'd heard from a distant cousin. There's a funeral on Thursday, she told me. Your mom planned it. Small service at the church. Are you going? I wasn't invited. Neither were you, apparently. I felt a flicker of something. Not pain, maybe relief. Mom had made the decision for me. I was officially not family anymore. That's fine, I said. Is it? Yeah, it actually is. 3 weeks after the funeral, an attorney contacted me. Dad's estate was being settled. There were debts, mostly. Medical bills from the cancer treatment, outstanding credit card balances, a small life insurance policy that went to Mom. But there was also a letter marked to be delivered to me upon his death. Do you want to receive it? The attorney asked. You're not obligated. Given the family situation, I understand if you'd prefer not to. What does it say? I haven't read it. Attorney-client privilege. But it's short. Half a page, maybe? I thought about it. The last letter had been full of justifications and blame. 7 pages of excuses for why he destroyed our family. Send it, I said, but send it to my lawyer, not directly to me. The letter arrived 2 days later, forwarded through my lawyer with a note. Read this when you're ready. Or don't. Your choice. I kept the sealed envelope on my desk for a week. Every time I walked past it, I felt a weight in my chest. Curiosity mixed with dread. Finally, Desmond sat down next to me. Want me to read it first? Or throw it away? Or burn it dramatically in the fireplace? We don't have a fireplace. We could get one. I've been thinking about remodeling. I picked up the envelope. If I read this and it's terrible, will you still love me if I become a mess for a while? I'll love you if you become a mess forever. I opened the envelope. The letter was written in shaky handwriting, clearly done in the last days of his life. It said, You were right. I stole from you. I lied to you. I chose myself over you every single time. I can't fix it now. There's no time left, no money left, nothing I can give you except this. You were right to walk away. You were right to protect yourself. I hope you've built a good life without me. You deserved better than what I gave you. I'm sorry I couldn't be that. Dad. I read it twice. Then I handed it to Desmond. Huh, he said after reading it. That's almost a real apology, almost. How do you feel? I thought about it carefully. Tested my emotions like prodding a sore tooth. Sad, not for me, for him. He spent his whole life making terrible choices, and in the end all he could do was admit it. But admitting it didn't change anything. Didn't give me back those years. Didn't undo the damage. Are you going to forgive him? No, but I'm not going to carry him anymore either. He's gone. I can finally put the whole thing down. I folded the letter and put it in the box with Brenna's apology letter, Grandma's original will, and all the court documents from the lawsuits. Then I put the box in the back of my closet, behind winter coats and old shoes. Out of sight, not forgotten, but not front and center anymore. Just part of my history. Not my present, not my future. 6 months after Dad died, I ran into Brenna at a grocery store. It was completely random. I was buying cheese for a dinner party. She was in the pasta aisle with 2 small children who looked exactly like her. We froze when we saw each other. Hi, she said cautiously. Hi. The twins, they had to be the twins, they looked about 5 now, stared at me with open curiosity. Who's that? One of them asked. Brenna's face flushed. This is my sister. You have a sister? Yes, we don't see each other very often. I should have walked away. Instead, I crouched down to their level. Hi, I'm your aunt. Their eyes got wide. We have an aunt? Apparently. Do you have kids? The other twin asked. No, just a dog. His name is Ranger. We want a dog, they said in unison. Brenna looked exhausted. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She wore workout clothes that had seen better days. No makeup, no designer bags, just a tired single mom doing her grocery shopping. They look like you, I said, standing back up. Everyone says that. She paused. They ask about you sometimes when they see other kids with aunts and uncles. I tell them you live far away. That's not inaccurate. Emotionally, I mean, also not inaccurate. We stood there awkwardly while the twins examined boxes of pasta shaped like dinosaurs. I got your letter, I said finally. The one from your 12-step program. I didn't expect a response. I know, that's part of why I'm telling you this. It was a good letter. You didn't make excuses. You didn't ask for anything that mattered. Her eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I'm not saying I forgive you or that I want to have a relationship. I'm just saying the letter mattered. It showed me you've actually changed, or you're trying to. That counts for something. Can I ask, are you happy? Very. Good. She wiped her eyes quickly. That's good. You deserve it. The twins started arguing about which pasta shape was scientifically superior. Brenna moved to intervene. Before you go, I said. Are you okay? Financially, I mean. Are the kids okay? She looked surprised. We're okay. Not great, but okay. Grant, my partner, he's good to us. He's not rich, but he's steady. We manage. If you ever need help, serious help, emergency help, Aunt Patricia has my number. I couldn't ask you. I'm not offering to fund your lifestyle. I'm offering to make sure your children have food and heat and safety. There's a difference. She nodded, crying openly now. Thank you. Don't make me regret it. I walked away before she could respond, before I could change my mind, before the old guilt could hook me and drag me back into the dysfunction. In the parking lot, I called Desmond. I just saw Brenna. How was it? Weird, sad. Okay, I think. Do you want to talk about it? I want to go home, play with Ranger, and eat all the fancy cheese we bought. That sounds perfect. It was perfect. The rest of the evening, the rest of my life, all of it stretching out ahead of me without the weight of my family's expectations crushing down. 7 years after the coffee shop confrontation, Aunt Patricia called with news. Mom had died. Heart attack. Quick and unexpected. The funeral is next week, she said. Your mother's sister is organizing it. Not your father's family. What's left of them anyway? Are you going? I thought about Mom. The way she'd stood by while Dad demanded I give away my house. The way she'd known about the credit card fraud and never said anything. The way she'd chosen him over and over until there was nothing left to choose. But I also thought about the small moments. Her teaching me to braid my hair. Her proud smile at my college graduation. The way she'd cried when I moved away for my first job. Not because she was sad, but because she was worried I wouldn't be able to handle being alone. She'd loved me, in her way. It just hadn't been enough. I'll go, I said. The funeral was small. Maybe 20 people, mostly Mom's side of the family that I barely knew. Brenna was there with Grant and the twins. She gave me a small wave from across the room. I nodded back. We didn't sit together, didn't speak beyond a brief acknowledgement, but we were both there, orbiting the same grief from different distances. During the service, people spoke about Mom's kindness, her volunteer work at the church, her skill at quilting. They talked about her like she was a saint. No one mentioned Dad or the fraud or how she'd enabled his worst behaviors. When it was over, I stood by her grave for a few minutes, alone. I'm sorry you spent your life loving someone who didn't deserve it, I said quietly. I'm sorry you never found the strength to leave. I'm sorry you chose him over me. I put a single flower on the casket. Then I walked away. Brenna caught up with me in the parking lot. Wait, I turned. I wanted you to know Mom talked about you at the end. When she knew she was sick, she'd been having heart problems for months. She asked me to tell you something. What? She said she was proud of you, for leaving, for building your own life. She said she'd never been that brave. I felt tears prick my eyes. She told you that? In the hospital, the day before she died. She made me promise to tell you if I ever saw you again. Brenna's voice cracked. She also said she was sorry for not protecting you, for not being stronger. Did she say anything about Dad? About what he did? She said she knew. She'd always known. She just didn't know how to stop loving him, even when he was destroying everything. I nodded. That sounded like Mom, trapped by her own heart. Thank you for telling me, I said. Thank you for coming. It would have meant something to her. We stood there in the parking lot, two sisters who barely knew each other anymore, sharing a moment of genuine connection for the first time in 7 years. Your kids are beautiful, I said finally. They're a handful, she smiled. But they're mine. I did that. I built that. Good for you. Good for you too. Aunt Patricia says you're doing really well, that you're happy. I am. I'm glad. Really glad. I got in my car. Brenna got in hers. We drove in different directions back to our separate lives. I never saw her again. 8 years after the coffee shop, Desmond and I got married. It was a small ceremony in our backyard with 30 people we actually loved. Aunt Patricia officiated. Diane cried through the whole thing. My friends from work came. My volunteers from the women's shelter came. One of them brought her 3-year-old daughter, the child she'd had after leaving an abusive situation with my help. No one from my original family was there. I didn't miss them. During the reception, Aunt Patricia pulled me aside. I've been thinking about your grandmother a lot today. She would have loved this, loved seeing you this happy. I wish she'd been here. She is here, in the life you've built, in the person you've become. She wanted you to have freedom and security and love. You have all three. She squeezed my hand. You won. I looked around at the people laughing and eating and celebrating with us, at Desmond talking animatedly with Diane about something ridiculous, at the simple joy of being surrounded by people who genuinely cared. Yeah, I said, I did. 9 years later, I was promoted to director. The salary was life-changing. For the first time, I could save aggressively while still living comfortably. Desmond and I talked about buying a bigger house, maybe starting a family. I want kids, he said one night, but only if you do, only if you're ready. I thought about my childhood, the dysfunction, the manipulation, the way I'd been taught that love meant sacrifice and sacrifice meant suffering. I want to be a different kind of parent, I said. I want to be the kind who shows up, who keeps promises, who chooses their kids first. You will be. How do you know? Because you've already broken the cycle. You've already chosen different. Having kids is just the next step. We started trying 6 months later. It took a while. Fertility issues on my side. But eventually I got pregnant. During my pregnancy, I thought about calling Brenna, thought about reaching out, letting her know she was going to be an aunt, asking for advice about twins since she'd been through it. I never made the call. Some bridges were meant to stay burned. Our daughter was born on a Wednesday morning in April. We named her Margaret after my grandmother, Maggie for short. She had Desmond's eyes and my stubborn chin. She was perfect. Aunt Patricia and Diane came to visit in the hospital. They brought flowers and balloons and tears of joy. Your grandmother would have loved her, Aunt Patricia whispered, holding Maggie carefully. I know. Are you going to tell Brenna? No. What about when Maggie asks about cousins, about extended family? I looked at my daughter sleeping peacefully in Aunt Patricia's arms. I'll tell her the truth, that sometimes family hurts you, and when that happens, you have to choose yourself. I'll tell her about Grandma, and how she tried to protect me even after death. I'll tell her about you and Diane, about chosen family, about how love is a verb, not a noun. That's a lot of complicated truth for a baby. She'll grow into it. Maggie did grow into it. By the time she was 5, she understood that some people had big extended families with lots of cousins and grandparents, and some people had smaller families that were just as complete. Do I have cousins? She asked once. Technically, yes, but we don't see them. Why? Because their mom and I had a disagreement a long time ago, and we decided it was healthier to stay apart. Was she mean to you? Sometimes. Then I don't want to meet her. I smiled. Maybe someday when you're older you can decide for yourself, but for now it's okay to just have the family we have. She seemed satisfied with that answer. Maggie grew up surrounded by love, real love, the kind that showed up consistently. Aunt Patricia and Diane taught her to garden. Desmond taught her to cook. I taught her about money, about saving, about protecting yourself from people who would take advantage. She never met my parents, never met Brenna, never experienced the dysfunction that had shaped my early life. Sometimes I wondered if I should have done more to keep those connections alive, if I was depriving Maggie of something important. Then I remembered the coffee shop, the years of manipulation, the stolen inheritance, the way they demanded I give up my own home without a second thought. No, Maggie didn't need that. She needed exactly what she had, parents who showed up, who kept promises, who chose her first. 10 years after the coffee shop, I was invited to speak at a conference about financial abuse and recovery. I almost didn't go. Public speaking terrified me. But the organizer was persistent, and eventually I agreed. I told my story to 300 people, about the credit card fraud, about the forged will, about the pressure campaign to give away my house, about walking away and rebuilding. Afterward, dozens of people came up to me. They shared their own stories, Parents who'd stolen their identity, siblings who'd demanded money, partners who'd controlled every penny. "How did you do it?" one woman asked, crying. "How did you actually walk away?" "I decided I mattered more than their comfort," I said. "I decided my peace was worth more than their approval. And then I just did it, one day at a time, one boundary at a time. I'm scared I'll regret it." "You might, but you'll regret staying more." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Thank you." I drove home that night feeling lighter than I had in years. My story had meant something. My pain had been transformed into something useful, something that could help others. That's what healing looked like. Not forgetting, not necessarily forgiving, but transforming. Making something beautiful out of something broken. 11 years after the coffee shop, I got a message from an unknown number. It was Brenna. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but Oliver was asking about you. He remembered meeting you in the grocery store years ago. He asked why he doesn't have an aunt when his friends do." I didn't know what to say. Would it be okay if I told him the truth, that we're sisters, but we don't see each other because I hurt you? I want him to understand that actions have consequences, even with family. Maybe especially with family. I stared at the message for a long time. Finally, I wrote back, "You can tell him whatever you think is appropriate. I'm not going to control your narrative. But yes, telling him that actions have consequences is a good lesson. I hope he learns it earlier than we did." She responded immediately. "Thank you, that's fair. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy." I didn't respond to that. I'd said what needed to be said. The conversation ended there. 3 days later, she sent one more message. "Oliver wanted you to have this." Attached was a child's drawing. It showed 2 stick figures labeled Aunt and Me. They were holding hands. Above them, in careful kindergarten letters, it said, "I wish I could meet you." I saved the drawing to my phone. I didn't respond, but I saved it. 12 years after the coffee shop, Aunt Patricia died. Heart failure. She was 71. I was devastated. She'd been my anchor, my proof that family could be healthy and supportive and good. Losing her felt like losing the foundation I'd built my life on. At her funeral, Diane read a letter Aunt Patricia had written before she died. It was addressed to me. "My dear girl," it began. "If you're hearing this, then I've moved on to whatever comes next. Don't be too sad. I've lived a full life, loved deeply, and died knowing I was loved in return. That's all anyone can ask for. I want you to know how proud I am of you. When your father stole from you, you could have become bitter and broken. Instead, you became strong and principled. You built a life based on your values, not on obligation or guilt. You chose yourself when no one else would. That takes extraordinary courage. I also want you to know that your grandmother saw this in you. She knew you'd be okay. That's why she left you that money, not because she thought you needed it, but because she wanted you to have the security to walk away if you had to. She wanted you to have freedom. You used her gift exactly as she hoped you would. You chose freedom. You chose yourself. You built a family based on love, not biology. Keep doing that. Keep choosing the people who choose you. Keep building the life you deserve. And when you doubt yourself, because you will, everyone does, remember that you have already survived the worst they could do to you. You came out the other side. You won. I love you. I'm proud of you, and I'll be watching over you just like your grandmother has been all along. Love, Aunt Patricia." I sobbed through the entire reading. Desmond held me while I shook. Maggie, now 7, climbed into my lap and hugged me tight. "It's okay to be sad, Mama," she whispered. "Aunt Patricia was special. She really was." After the funeral, Diane pulled me aside. She wanted you to have something. She handed me a small wooden box. Inside was Grandma's pearl necklace, the one she'd worn in every family photo. There was a note attached. "These belong to your grandmother. They should have come to you years ago. Now they're finally home. Patricia." I held the pearls carefully, feeling their weight, feeling the connection to the women who'd come before me, who'd tried to protect me, who'd loved me even when it cost them. "Thank you," I whispered to the air, to wherever Aunt Patricia was now, for everything. 13 years after the coffee shop, I published a book about financial abuse and recovery. It became a bestseller, not because I was a particularly skilled writer, but because the story resonated. Thousands of people had experienced what I had. They needed to know they weren't alone. I did book tours, gave interviews, spoke at conferences. Everywhere I went, people thanked me for putting their experience into words. One woman approached me after an event in Seattle. "My mother wants my inheritance," she said. "She says I owe it to her because she raised me, but she was abusive. She destroyed my childhood. Do I owe her anything?" "No," I said firmly. "You don't owe your abusers anything, not money, not time, not peace, not forgiveness. You get to protect yourself. You get to choose your own life. Even if she's dying, especially if she's dying. Deathbed guilt is still manipulation." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." I thought about Dad's letter, his half-apology, about how his death hadn't changed anything, about how I'd chosen not to give him the comfort of my forgiveness, and I'd never regretted it. "You get to choose yourself," I told her again. "That's not selfish. That's survival." 14 years after the coffee shop, Maggie came home from school upset. "Lily's parents are getting divorced," she said. "Lily says it's because her dad was mean to her mom. She says her mom is brave for leaving." "That's true," I said carefully. "Sometimes people have to leave relationships that hurt them, even family relationships." "Like you did with your sister." "Yes. Do you ever miss her?" I thought about it honestly. "Sometimes I miss the idea of her, the sister I wanted her to be, but I don't miss the person she actually was, the one who hurt me." "What's the difference?" "The idea was who I hoped she'd be. The reality was who she chose to be, and I had to accept the reality, not keep wishing for the idea." Maggie nodded thoughtfully. "I think I understand." She went to her room to do homework. I sat there marveling at how I'd managed to raise a daughter who could process complex emotional concepts at 9 years old, who could understand that love wasn't always enough, that sometimes walking away was the right choice. I'd broken the cycle. She'd never have to unlearn what I'd spent decades unlearning. 15 years after the coffee shop, I got an email from Oliver, Brenna's son. He was 15 now, old enough to find me on social media and reach out on his own. "Dear Aunt," he wrote, "I know you and my mom don't talk. I know it's complicated. She's told me some of it, though I'm sure there's more she hasn't said. I'm not writing to ask you to reconcile or to make you feel guilty. I just wanted you to know that I think about you sometimes. I remember meeting you when I was little. You seemed nice, different from our family, calm. I wish I'd gotten to know you, but I understand why I didn't. My mom made mistakes, big ones. She spent my whole life trying to fix them. I don't know if that matters to you, but I thought you should know. I hope you're well. I hope you have a good life. Maybe someday, if you're ever willing, I can meet my cousin. Mom says I have one, a girl around my age, I think. It would be nice to have more family, but I understand if that's not possible. Take care. Oliver." I read the email 3 times, then I showed it to Desmond. "What do you think?" "I think that's a thoughtful kid who didn't do anything wrong. His mother did. He's not his mother." I thought about the sins of the father, about how I'd vowed never to punish children for their parents' mistakes, about how the cycle of dysfunction only continued if we let it. "I don't know if I'm ready," I said. "Then don't be ready. Tell him maybe someday. Keep the door open without walking through it yet." I wrote back to Oliver that night. "Thank you for reaching out. You're right that it's complicated. Your mother and I have history that can't be easily resolved, but you didn't cause that history. You're your own person. I'm not ready for a relationship right now, but I appreciate you writing. If you want to write again in the future, I'll read it. Maybe someday, when you're older, we can meet. Until then, I wish you well. And yes, you have a cousin. Her name is Maggie. She's a good kid. Take care of yourself. Your aunt." He wrote back immediately. "Thank you for responding. That's more than I expected. I'll respect your boundaries, but I'm glad you exist. I'm glad Maggie exists. It makes me feel less alone somehow. Take care." I didn't respond to that, but I saved the message, and I thought about the future, about the possibility that maybe someday, when enough time had passed, I could build something with the next generation that I couldn't build with the previous one. Maybe someday, but not yet. 16 years after the coffee shop, I was standing in my kitchen making dinner when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hello, is this?" A pause. "Is this the daughter of Thomas and Margaret?" My parents' names. My stomach dropped. "Who is this?" "I'm calling from the county medical examiner's office. I'm sorry to inform you that your sister Brenna Chen was killed in a car accident this morning. The wooden spoon fell from my hand. What? She listed you as her emergency contact. We need someone to come identify the body and make arrangements. She has minor children. Are you able to? Her children, Oliver and Sophie. Where are they? They're with their father currently. He's been notified, but there are estate matters, personal effects. I'll come. I hung up and immediately called Desmond. He came home from work early. We drove to the hospital together, his hand steady on my knee while I shook. Brenna was 38, too young, way too young. They led me to the viewing room. She looked like she was sleeping, peaceful, no signs of trauma. The accident had been quick, they said, a drunk driver. She hadn't suffered. That's her, I confirmed, my voice hollow. They handed me a bag of personal effects, her wallet, her phone, her wedding ring. She'd remarried Grant 3 years ago, I learned later. A photo of the twins from when they were little, tucked in her wallet. I sat in the hospital waiting room and went through her phone. The passcode was still 1234, the same one she'd had in her 20s. Some things never change. Her texts were full of messages to the twins, reminders about homework, inside jokes. Love you to the moon and back, she'd sent to Oliver that morning, an hour before the accident. Her last message to me was from 3 years ago, the drawing Oliver had sent. She'd never deleted our conversation thread, even though I'd never responded after that. I found myself crying, not for the sister I'd had, but for the sister I'd lost long before today, for the chance at reconciliation that would now never come, for Oliver and Sophie, who'd lost their mother, for the waste of it all. Desmond put his arm around me. I'm sorry. I didn't think I'd care this much. She was still your sister. You're allowed to grieve. The funeral was large. Brenna had built a life in the community. She had friends, colleagues, people who'd loved her. Grant spoke, crying openly. She spent years making amends for past mistakes, he said. She became the person she always should have been. She was a good mother, a good partner, a good friend. She was finally happy. Oliver spoke too. At 15, he was poised and articulate. My mom used to tell me that everyone deserves a second chance, that everyone can change if they want to badly enough. She proved that. She changed her whole life. She became someone I'm proud to call my mom. Sophie, 15 and tiny like her mother, whispered about how her mom had taught her to be strong, to stand up for herself, to never accept less than she deserved. I sat in the back, Maggie beside me, and wondered if I should have answered Oliver's email differently, if I should have let Brenna back in, if I'd missed something important by holding on to my anger. After the service, Oliver found me. Thank you for coming. I'm sorry for your loss. Will you? He hesitated. Will you stay for the reception? I'd like you to meet Sophie and Grant. I think they'd want to know you. I almost said no, almost used Maggie as an excuse, said we needed to get home, but then I looked at this kid who just lost his mother, who was trying so hard to hold it together, and I couldn't. We'll stay. Sophie looked exactly like Brenna, same eyes, same stubborn chin. She stared at me with open curiosity. You're the aunt, she said. I'm the aunt. Mom talked about you sometimes. She said you were the bravest person she knew. She said that. She said you walked away when everything was broken and you built something better. She said that took more courage than she ever had. I felt tears burning. Your mom was brave too. She changed her whole life. That's not easy. She wanted to apologize to you properly. She talked about it all the time, but she didn't think you'd want to hear from her. I wouldn't have, not then. What about now? Now it doesn't matter. She's gone. Sophie nodded. I wish things had been different. I wish we'd known you, known Maggie. Maggie stepped forward. I'm Maggie. The two girls stared at each other. Cousins who should have grown up together, who'd lost years because of adult dysfunction. Do you want to be friends? Sophie asked. Maggie looked at me. I nodded. Yeah, Maggie said. I'd like that. And just like that, something shifted. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation with the past, but something new, something the next generation could build. Later that evening, Grant pulled me aside. Brenna left you something in her will. She updated it 2 years ago. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $80,000, the exact amount she'd received from the fraudulent inheritance. There was also a letter. I know this doesn't make up for what was stolen from you. I know money doesn't fix betrayal or erase the years you struggled while I benefited from our father's theft. but this is yours. It always should have been yours. I'm sorry I didn't give it back sooner. I'm sorry I didn't do a lot of things sooner. I'm sorry we ran out of time. I hope you're happy. I hope you have everything you deserve. And I hope someday maybe our kids can have what we didn't, a real family, even if we can't be part of it. Brenna. I held the check and the letter, feeling the weight of 16 years collapse into this moment. She really did change, Grant said quietly. She wasn't the person you knew anymore. She'd become someone better. I believe you. I'm sorry you never got to see it. Me too. I took the check home, put it in a college fund for Oliver and Sophie. They'd need it more than I did. Money didn't matter anymore. It had never really been about the money. It had been about the principle, about being seen and valued, about not being treated like my needs were less important than everyone else's wants. Brenna had finally seen it. She'd finally understood. She tried to make it right, and now she was gone. 17 years after the coffee shop, Maggie started high school. She and Sophie had become close friends, texting daily, seeing each other on weekends. Oliver was in college, studying psychology, wanting to understand family dynamics and help others navigate dysfunction. They called me Aunt, not grudgingly, not formally, but naturally, like I'd always been part of their lives. One Sunday, Oliver came over for dinner. Afterward, he helped me with dishes while Desmond and the girls played with Ranger in the backyard. I'm writing a paper about generational trauma, Oliver said, about how dysfunction passes down through families, about how some people break the cycle. Sounds like a heavy topic. It's important, though. I want to understand why some families stay broken and others heal, why you and my mom couldn't reconcile, but you and I could have a relationship. Do you resent me for not giving your mom another chance? He was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes when she was alive, I used to wish you'd call, wish you'd show up, wish you'd forgive her so we could all be a family, but then she died, and I understood something I hadn't before. What's that? That your healing mattered more than her redemption, that you weren't obligated to sacrifice your peace to make her feel better about her past, that boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection. I felt something release in my chest, some guilt I'd been carrying for 16 years. I'm glad you understand that. I learned it from you and from Mom, actually. She used to tell us that just because someone changes doesn't mean you owe them access to your life, that forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation. She was teaching us what she wished someone had taught her earlier. She sounds like she was a good mom. She was. She really was. He smiled sadly. I think she would have been a good sister, too, if you'd had the chance to know her then, the version of her that existed in those last few years. Maybe in another life. Maybe. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat with Desmond on our back porch. The house was quiet, peaceful. Do you regret it? He asked. Not reconciling with Brenna before she died. I thought about it carefully, tested my feelings the way I always did. I regret that we ran out of time. I regret that she didn't make better choices earlier so we could have had those years, but I don't regret protecting myself. I don't regret the boundaries I set. If I'd let her back in before I was ready, if I'd sacrificed my peace for her comfort, I'd have lost myself in the process. And then what would I have had to give to Maggie? To you? To the life we've built? Nothing. Nothing. I agreed. So no, I don't regret it. I'm sad about how it ended, but I don't regret the choices I made. He kissed the top of my head. You made the right choices. I hope so. You did. Look at what we have. Look at who our daughter is becoming. Look at the relationship you have with Oliver and Sophie now. None of that would exist if you hadn't set those boundaries, if you hadn't chosen yourself first. He was right. I could see it clearly, the straight line from the coffee shop confrontation to this moment. Every boundary I'd set, every person I'd walked away from, every choice I'd made to prioritize my own healing, it had all led here, to this porch, this peace, this life. 18 years after the coffee shop, I was invited to give a TED Talk about breaking generational patterns. I almost didn't accept. The spotlight still made me uncomfortable, but then I thought about all the people who'd reached out after my book, all the messages from readers saying they'd finally found the courage to leave, to protect themselves, to choose their own peace. My story mattered, not because it was unique. Unfortunately, it was far too common, but because I'd survived it and built something beautiful on the other side. The talk went viral. Millions of views, thousands of comments from people sharing their own experiences with family dysfunction and estrangement. You made me realize I'm not a bad person for cutting off my toxic parents, one person wrote. You showed me that healing is more important than fixing relationships that can't be fixed, wrote another. Thank you for giving me permission to choose myself, said a third. Permission. That's what people needed. Permission to protect themselves. Permission to walk away. Permission to prioritize their own healing over everyone else's comfort. I'd given them that just by telling my truth. 19 years after the coffee shop, Maggie graduated high school. She'd been accepted to multiple top universities with full scholarships. She'd grown into an incredible young woman, confident, compassionate, grounded. At her graduation party, I stood back and watched her laughing with friends, talking animatedly about her plans to study social work, specifically to help children in dysfunctional families. Sophie was there too, celebrating alongside her cousin. Oliver had driven in from grad school to attend. Grant came up beside me. Brenna would have been so proud, he said quietly. I think so too. I never got to thank you properly for accepting the kids into your life, for giving them family when they'd lost so much. They're good kids. It wasn't hard. Still, it mattered. You mattered to them and to Brenna, even if she never got to tell you that properly. I watched Maggie and Sophie take a selfie together, arms around each other, grinning at the camera. We broke the cycle, I said. You broke the cycle, Grant corrected. You showed all of us how. 20 years after the coffee shop, I was sitting in my home office, now a grandmother myself. Maggie had married her college sweetheart and had a baby girl named Patricia after Aunt Patricia. I was writing my second book, this one about the long-term effects of estrangement and how to navigate complicated family situations with the next generation. My phone rang, unknown number, but I'd gotten better about answering over the years. Hello? Hi, this is Oliver. I'm calling from the hospital. Sophie had her baby, a boy, 8 pounds, 3 ounces. Everyone's healthy. That's wonderful news. She wants to know, would you come meet him? She's naming him Thomas after our grandfather, but she wants you to be there. She says it's important that he knows his whole family from the beginning. Thomas, Dad's name. After everything he'd done, Sophie was still honoring him, still finding a way to acknowledge the complicated mix of good and bad that made up their family history. I'll be there in 20 minutes. At the hospital, I held my great-nephew and looked into his tiny face. He had Brenna's eyes, my eyes, the family resemblance unmistakable. Sophie was exhausted, but glowing. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. I want him to know you. I want him to grow up understanding that family is complicated, but that doesn't mean we give up on it entirely. That sometimes we have to protect ourselves, but sometimes we get second chances with the next generation. That's a wise way to look at it. I learned it from you and from my mom. From both of you, actually. You showed us how to walk away when we need to. She showed us how to change and grow. Between the two of you, we learned how to be whole people. I stayed at the hospital for 2 hours, holding baby Thomas, talking with Sophie and Oliver about their lives, their plans, their hopes for this new generation. When I finally left, I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried. Not from sadness, from something else. Something like resolution. I'd survived my family's dysfunction. I'd protected myself. I'd set boundaries. I'd walked away when I needed to. I'd built a life based on my values, not on obligation. And now, 20 years later, I was watching the next generation build something different, something healthier, something that honored both the pain and the healing. The cycle was broken, for good this time. I drove home to my own family, Desmond, Maggie, her husband, and baby Patricia. They were in the backyard grilling dinner, laughing at something silly. This was my family, not the one I'd been born into, but the one I'd built through choice, through boundaries, through decades of choosing myself first so I'd have something left to give to the people who deserved it. 20 years after the coffee shop confrontation, I'd finally made peace with it all. Not forgiveness. I still didn't owe anyone that, but peace. Understanding that everyone in my original family had been doing their best, even when their best was terrible. Understanding that I'd made the right choices for me, even when those choices hurt. Understanding that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away, and the second bravest thing is to let the next generation build the bridges you couldn't. I'd done both, and I was finally completely at peace. That evening, sitting around the dinner table with my chosen family and the beginnings of reconciliation with the next generation, I thought about Grandma's original will. The 25% she'd left me, specifically for a house of my own, security, freedom. I'd gotten that house. Not from her money, that had taken years to recover, but from my own work, my own sacrifice, my own determination. And in the end, that was better, because I'd proven to myself that I could survive without them. I could thrive without them. I could build something beautiful without their approval, their support, or their validation. I'd chosen myself. Every single day for 20 years, I'd chosen myself, and that made all the difference as the first looked around the table at faces that smiled back at me with genuine love, with respect, with acceptance. I realized something profound. I'd won. Not because I'd destroyed my original family or gotten perfect revenge, but because I'd built something better in their place. I'd taken the broken pieces they'd left me with and created a mosaic more beautiful than anything they'd ever given me. That was the real victory. Not vengeance. Not even justice. Just healing. Just peace. Just choice. Every single day, choosing the life I wanted instead of the life they'd demanded. That was enough. That was everything.